Hey Yorktown, it's Supervisor Matt Slater here at the John C. Hart Memorial Library. For Women's History Month, we are once again providing some great features that you can find here at the John C. Hart Memorial Library. We continue to provide these great services through our porch pickup program, which again you can always find information about on the John C. Hart Memorial Library Facebook page, website, and Instagram. But we're going to turn it over to our librarians who are going to provide some great pieces of literature for both our children, for our young adults, and our adults. So why don't you take it away?
Okay. Hi, I'm Jane, and today I'm going to talk about two picture book biographies of two women who are unsung heroes from the past, from the early 1900s. They were instrumental in helping us move our society forward. The first book is called The House That Jane Built. It's a story about Jane Addams, and it's by Tanya Lee Stone and illustrated by Catherine Brown. Ever since she was a little girl, Jane Addams hoped to help people in need. She wanted to create a place where people could find work, food, and community. In 1889, she chose a house in a rundown neighborhood in Chicago and turned it into Hull House, a settlement home or community center that provided many services, including playgrounds, kindergartens, and a public bath. By 1907, Hull House included 13 buildings, and by the early 1920s, more than 9,000 people had used the services of Hull House per week. In addition to Jane's work with Hull House, she co-founded the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and spoke out against war. She also wrote many books, worked for women's right to vote, advised several presidents, and was a founding member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. By 1900, Jane was one of the most famous women in the world, and in 1931, she was the first American woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. The dreams of a smart, caring girl had become a reality, and the lives of hundreds of thousands of people were transformed when they stepped into the house that Jane built. This book is called The Only Woman in the Photo. It's called Frances Perkins and Her New Deal for America by Kathleen Krull and illustrated by Alexandra Bai. Most people have heard of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but do you know about the woman behind his groundbreaking New Deal? It was Frances Perkins. As a young girl, Frances was very shy and quiet, but her grandmother encouraged her to always challenge herself. She told Frances that when someone opens a door to you, you go forward. So shy Frances tried her hardest in everything she did. Frances realized she had to make her voice heard even when speaking made her uncomfortable, and use it to fight injustice and to build programs to protect people across the nation. So when newly elected President Franklin Delano Roosevelt asked Frances to become the Secretary of Labor and help pull the nation out of the Great Depression, she accepted the challenge and became the first woman cabinet member. Magazine headlines hailed her as Fearless Frances and the Woman Nobody Knows, and gave her full credit for creating the New Deal. In official pictures, she was the only woman in the photo. I'll show you a couple of pictures. Here it is. She is as Fearless Frances. There, the headline is The Woman Nobody Knows, and she's the only woman amongst all those men in the pictures. Today, the Department of Labor is housed in a building named for Frances Perkins, where a plaque reads, "This building is dedicated to the memory of Frances Perkins, Secretary of Labor, 1933 to 1945, whose legacy of social action enhances the lives of all American workers. In wartime and in peace, in depression and recovery, she articulated the hopes and dreams of working people and worked untiringly to make those hopes and dreams a reality. Through the force of her moral courage, intellect, and will, she brought sweeping changes to our national laws and practices and forever improved our society." Okay, Allison, over to you.
Hi, my name's Allison. The first book I wanted to bring to your attention is a young adult book called Women in Science. This beautifully illustrated educational book highlights the contributions of 50 notable women in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics from the ancient to modern world. Full of striking singular art, this fascinating collection also contains infographics with relative topics such as lab equipment, rates of women currently working in STEM fields, and an illustrated scientific glossary. The trailblazing women profiled in this include well-known figures like anthropologist Jane Goodall, as well as Katherine Johnson, the African-American physicist and mathematician who calculated the trajectory of the 1969 Apollo 11 mission to the moon. Women in Science celebrates the achievements of heroic women who paved the way for the next generation of female engineers, biologists, mathematicians, doctors, astronauts, physicists, and more. The second book I brought today is Mr. President, How Long Must We Wait? In this book, it begins when Woodrow Wilson arrives in Washington, D.C., March 1913, the day before he's set to take the presidential oath of office, and is surprised by the modest turnout. Turns out the crowds of reporters were all a block away from Union Station watching a parade of 8,000 suffragettes on Philadelphia Avenue in a protest organized by a 25-year-old activist named Alice Paul. Mr. President, How Long Must We Wait weaves together two storylines, that of Alice Paul and Woodrow Wilson, two opposites. Paul's procession of suffragettes resulted in her being granted a face-to-face meeting with President Wilson, one that would lead to many meetings but little progress for women. With no equality in sight and patience wearing thin, Paul organized the first group ever to picket in front of the White House lawn day and night, and they did so for months. From solitary confinement, hunger strikes, to the psychiatric ward, ever more determined in her activism, this book reveals the courageous near-death journey it took in Paul's leadership to gain women the right to vote in America. The remarkable tale about this little-known feminist hero is an eye-opening exploration of the crucial moment in American history, a century before the famous 2016 Women's March.
So there you have it, some great pieces of literature that we have here at the John C. Hart Memorial Library. As we said before, knowledge is power, so come educate yourself about the important role women have had in our society in so many different ways, from labor to science, and of course, their fight for their right to vote. Thanks so much, Yorktown. We'll see you soon.